Hello students, welcome to the science class. I, Seema Chauhan of Jagran Public School, Lucknow, is going to explain the chapter Getting Know About the Plants. In this video, I am going to explain the types of plants, roots, and flowers. Students, you must have seen so many plants around yourselves. These plants not only provide the food but also gives the oxygen to sustain the life of any living organism. We are classifying these plants on the basis of the thickness of the stem and the place of origin. So, based on these characteristics, we are classifying the plants into following types. The first type is herbs. Herbs, you know that these plants have green and tender stems. Tender means the soft stems. The branches of the herbs are usually having short branches. Example, mint, spinach, turnip, etc. So let's move to the next type of the plant, that is the shrubs. Shrubs, we all know that these are having the height greater than the herbs, but their stem is hard but not so thick. For example, like the bougainvillea, tulsi, rose, etc. So let's move to the next type of the plant, that is the trees. There are certain plants which are having a enormous height. For example, like the people, banyan, coconut, bamboo, and these plants are having the hard and thick brown stem. So these kind of the plants are called as the trees. So moving on to the next type of the plant, that is the creepers. Creepers, from the name suggests, it creeps over the ground. So there are certain plants which have weak stems and they require the support of the ground. So they spread themselves over the ground to creep it. So example like the watermelon, pumpkin, sweet potato, etc. Students, there are other plants which take the support on the neighboring structures and they climb up with the support. So these kind of the plant are called as the climbers. For example, money plant that is very common in your houses, cucumber, beans, grapevine, etc. So all these plants are coming under the category of the climbers. Now, if you have observed the structure of a plant, this whole plant system is divided into two main parts, that is the shoot system and the root system. So, the part of the plant which is above the ground level, that part is called as the shoot system. And the part of the plant which is below the ground level is called as the root system. So you are seeing the image here. This shoot system is having so many parts like the nodes, internodes, petiole, leaf, flowers, fruits, stem, etc. So all these parts are coming under the shoot system. So we will discuss the each part. So let us start with the root system. Roots. You have seen roots around yourselves when you are digging the plants. So these roots are very, very important for every plant. Why? Because without the roots, the plants cannot exist. So The reasons behind this are just due to the following functions. The first function, the roots, they are helping the plants to absorb the water and minerals from the soil and it transfer to the other parts of the plant through the stem. Secondly, it also helps the plant to anchor themselves firmly over the ground in the upright position. The third and the most important function, that is the it also supplies the nutrients and the food which is required for the growth of any living organisms. So just because of these functions, roots are very important. Moving on to the types of root. You have seen the different types of roots. So we will classify the roots into two types. That is the taproot system and the fibrous root system. The taproot system, in this, the main root or the primary root, it will give rise to many secondary roots, and the secondary roots are also called as the lateral roots. The leaves of this taproot system, it is showing the reticulate venation. Reticulate venation means the midrib is given to the different veins which is present in the leaves. So taproot is having the reticulate venation in the leaves. For example, carrot, turnip, gram, pea, china rose, etc. So let's move to the fibrous root system. In this kind of the root system, you will see the bunch of the several roots of the same size are coming from the base of the plant. And if you talk about the venation in the leaves, that is, it is showing the parallel venation. So this kind of the root system you will see in the banana, wheat, maize, bamboo, etc. So here I am showing you the image of the taproot and the fibrous root. You are seeing the so many roots are arising in the fibrous roots. So it is roots are arising from the base of the fibrous root, and the taproot also you are seeing the main root, that is the primary root, it is giving rise to the secondary roots, or you can say the lateral roots. Let's move to the next topic, that is the modifications of root. We all know that root not only performs a function for providing the nutrition or the water and minerals, but it also performs the different functions. So based on those functions, root are modified into different forms. So the first function, that is the root, it also performs the storage of food. For example, like the radish, carrot, beetle root, turnip, etc. So there are certain roots which are modified for supporting the mechanical support. Mechanical support you will see in the stilt, prop and climbing roots. Now you must be thinking that what is the difference between the stilt and the prop roots? In the stilt roots, you are seeing the image here. The roots are arising from the base of the plant or the stem here. But in the prop roots, you are seeing that the roots are arising from the upper portion of the stem. If we talk about the examples of the stilt root is the maize, and the prop roots is found in the banyan. So let's talk about the another function, that is the climbing purpose. So first here also they are performing this mechanical support. So the plants like the beetle, pepper, etc., they are having the roots which are arising from their stem, and it is detaching themselves to the support from for the climbing purpose. So let's move to the last topic, that is the flower. Flower is the most important reproductive and colorful structure which is found in the plant. And if you talk about the parts of a flower, the flower is divided into the pedicel, petals, sepals, stamen, pistil. The parts of the flower is also called as the whorls. So basically, the flower has four whorls. The first two whorls, that is the petals and the sepals, they are together forming the accessory organs of the flower, while the stamen and pistil, they are performing they are forming as the reproductive organ of the flower. So here I am showing you the image of this flower. You are seeing the stalk-like structure, the green color stalk-like structure which is attached to the stem. So that is called as the pedicel or the peduncle. Above this pedicel, there is a solen base which is green in color, and that is attached below the sepal. So that portion, it is called as the receptacle. Above the receptacle, there is a green leafy like structure which is called as the sepals. These sepals, above the sepals, you will see the colored petal like the structures, the most attracting part of the flower. And if we combine the petals, they will form the corolla, and if we combine the sepals, it will form the calyx. So moving on to the reproductive organs, the flower is having the male reproductive organ that is called as the stamen. Here I am showing you the dissected part of the stamen and the pistil. The stamen is divided into two major parts, that is the anther and the filament. Anther is the bilobed, basically brown, reddish brown or yellowish color, which is carrying the pollen grains. And inside these pollen grains, the male gamete is present there. So there are other names of the stamen, that is the androecium. So let's move to the last whorl of the flower, that is the pistil. So the common names of the pistil is the gynoecium or the carpel. Each pistil is composed of three parts, that is the stigma, style, and ovary. Stigma is the uppermost sticky part of the pistil where the pollen grains are attached. Inside the below the, you can say, the stigma, the tube-like structure, it is passing and it is penetrating inside the solen base. So that tube-like structure is called as the style. Now the solen base of the carpel is called as the ovary, and inside the ovary you will see several beads-like structure, and that beads-like structure is called as the ovules. Now you must be thinking that how does the flower it changes into the seed? So for this formation, it goes with the two-step process. The first step is the pollination and the second step is the fertilization. Now you must be having the question that what is pollination? Pollination, it is the transfer of the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of one flower or the other flower. So that means there here the transference is showing there. from the anther of one flower to the stigma of the other flower. So it is basically of the two types, that is the self-pollination and the cross-pollination. So here the examples of the self-pollination is the catharanthus, balsam, pea, wheat, and the cross-pollination is the coconut, maize, grasses, etc. So this is the next step, that is the fertilization. And when, how does the fertilization it takes place? Whenever the pollen tube it is coming, when the pollen grains are sticked by the stigma, it is carrying the male gamete, and this pollen it terminate into a tube-like structure that is called as the pollen tube, and it is pollen tube is penetrating inside the ovary, and it fuses with the female gamete. Then after this fusion, the ovule is formed, and the ovule, after the divisions, it will form a seed, and later on this seed will grow into a new plant. Now after the fertilization, the ovule will turn into the seed, and the ovary will turn into the fruits to protect the seed. So here I am showing you the image. How does the cross and the self-pollination it takes place? So briefly I can explain that whenever the honeybee it sits on the anther of the male flower, then it collects the uh, pollen grains, and it gets stick over the body of the honeybee, and when this honeybee it goes to the other flower, then the pollen grains are uh, you can say that is attached over the stigma of the other flower, and this pollen grains along with the male gamete it will go inside it, and inside the ovary to fertilize. So this is the common process which is taking place in the formation of the seed. So children, what we have learned so far: types of plants, parts of plant system, root system and its types, modification of roots, flower and its parts, pollination and types of pollination, fertilization. Thank you everyone.